Okay. So as he had said, I'm Andy Gish-Johnson at Pierogi Powered on Twitter, if you'd like to follow me. I'm going to present about building a collaborative or a teaching SOC. So first, a little bit of who am I? I'm a blue teamer. I'm from Pittsburgh. I got my start in the steel industry. Then I went to Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's always been blue team. And now I'm with Carnegie Mellon University. We're trying to build continuing to build a student-focused security operations center. Related to all of that, I'm also an organizer for BSides Pittsburgh. We celebrated our 8th year, 500 attendees. Our conference is also at a casino. So what am I doing? So at Carnegie Mellon University, we are trying to implement a teaching SOC that'll be follow the sun. So the overall idea is students will learn a theory in class. They could come to us and then apply their theory in a real security operations center using enterprise products. It's going to also be a follow the sun, like a lot of popular security operations centers. So students at our main campus in Pittsburgh will be working with us. They'll be working with professional and fellow student colleagues at our Cutter campus, transitioning work as our day ends and their day begins. Part of the job, I'm going to try to focus on learning compliance. We're going to be doing PCI and NIST. And then additionally, there's going to be collaboration with our research community. Carnegie Mellon's a research organization. We have a lot of people doing research. Rather than them build test environments, they could come to us, collaborate with us, test different ideas. We've got a network. We've got thousands of people, thousands of different products. Let's see what we can do. So how did I get here from or how did I get here from where I used to be? I think we've all had the same kind of experiences. You're working in a blue team space. There's this compliance obsession. You've just got these bad alerts. You've got a missing alerts. How many people have the same low quality, high volume alerts? Internal failed logins are my pet peeve. I just hate them. They're almost always an IT issue. There's no real value unless you are focused on meeting that compliance goal or meeting that SLA. I need these open tickets so I could close them, so I could meet my goal of, I need 13 or 20 tickets a day. 20 of them are failed logins. Boom, I'm done in a half hour. I opened, ServiceNow or Service Manager tickets to all the IT organizations. Time to sit back and relax. Related to that, you got the siloing where you're just hunkered down on these tickets. You're throwing out ServiceNow tickets to groups. You're sending emails, but nobody really wants to respond to you. Or are you really making the place any better? Your emails get ignored. Maybe you're using the wrong language. Hey, database admin, I saw these failed logins against this host. What database is it against? I got 100 different databases running on this host, let alone this is a clustered host. You're not helping me. You're just sending me a ticket that I'm also going to ignore. And then finally, career pathing. I really like the blue team, but not everybody else does. I like looking at logs, not everybody else does. When I've had junior colleagues, what path do they have? How do you get people to find something? Not everybody wants to go into IR, not everybody wants to go into SIM management. How do you provide them an internal career path so they can continue contributing to the organization and they don't just leave? And then how do you find people within the company that want to help you? Those were the experiences I had, and then finally, when I had reached a senior level, it was it's time to fix all of this. So one, use compliance for good. Map your good security alerts to these compliance controls. So back to internal failed logins. How about instead of that, because it's always an IT issue almost. You've probably got password lockouts, or you've got two-factor authentication, or you've got these mitigations. Maybe you have auto block for an IP. Do you really need to look at this system tried to log in 5,000 times with the same failed password. That's a waste of your time. You've stopped it in most cases. So for instance, maybe you have an alert, hey, instead of looking at failed logins, I wait till a user gets to like a duo prompt, and then instead of completing the two-factor, the second factor, they just sit. That's a much better alert. So explain in relation to that to either your leadership or your compliance person. So, hey, this alert that's, a user has stopped a duo, that relates to, PCI 1024 or NIST 318, it's an invalid access attempt. I'm not looking at what's typically an IT issue. I'm looking at this because this is somebody most likely trying to access the system that doesn't have access. My alerts explain that so the junior analyst can see it, the manager can see it, anybody looking at the SIM I'm running, seeing the alert knows how this maps to compliance. It explains what we're doing. So, as a junior analyst, like how many people didn't talk to compliance till they were a senior? Like that was me. I just kept avoiding compliance, and then suddenly it's my turn to talk to audit. And I was just like, oh, I know PCI exists, but that's it. So now, you're not refreshing, you're learning the whole PCI. Rulebook, like with this, junior colleagues I were working on, they understood PCI, they understood NIST, because they've been seeing these alerts, they've been seeing, these phrases. They understood. An auditor could come by, they could talk to any of us. I don't have to be the guy who's there. Like, anybody in the room could explain how we're compliant, including my management. So for instance, so I've always used Splunk for enterprise security. This is a screenshot from Splunk for enterprise security that's super redacted. If you've never seen this before, you have like your alert, you've got a description, you've got some additional fields to help you, some next steps. That's not really important, but you could kind of see in the middle how this alert, which was a user performed an action on a Splunk object. So this alert's related to NIST Control 331 about protecting logging systems and PCI Control 1022. So an analyst looking at this, it's not front and center, but we're trying to do our job, but through repetition of seeing these alerts would know, oh, this NIST control or this PCI control, this is why I'm doing this job, this is why this makes sense. It's not fancy, Splunk isn't the prettiest interface, but it is what it is. But you've got compliance there. You're seeing it every day. You're understanding why you have compliance. It's not this once every 6 months, or once every 1 year thing. It's gone to a continuous thing. So transitioning from the compliance thing, the second part I am doing is collaboration. So in addition to having compliance throughout the workflow, we also do collaboration. We meet with fellow IT groups, fellow groups within the organization to review what we're working on, what we're doing. Hey, here are alerts we're doing. Here's how it relates to compliance. So, back to database team. Here's what we're doing. Do you see any gaps in what we're doing? We're focused on the IP stack. Maybe we should, which for a database we should be looking at database logs. That could be an entire giant oversight in what we're doing. Are we looking at alerts that are entirely worthless? Are there things we're missing? Because, IT people they know what their systems are up to, or it could be something like, well, I see you didn't get any alerts over the weekend. We did a major upgrade. Why didn't you see anything? Or did you know your logging's not working anymore? Or I see your alerts are only for like one log stream. Maybe you're looking at the operating system and not any of the application logs. You see us logging in, but you don't see any of the users. That sort of thing. I've been bringing junior analysts along, get them involved. They were involved in compliance. Let's get them involved in improving the SIM. Let's get them talking to people, improve relations, do a cross-training. So if you're the junior analyst that maybe has more of a network focus, like when we talk to the networking team, come on along, like let's talk to them. You could kind of build a bridge with that group, get your name out there. Yeah. So here's an example dashboard. I mean, again, this is a pretty, like a lot of different group, products, but I'm using Splunk. So, you know, in these meetings, like for instance, this is back to the Duo authentication system. I'll show a sample for the Duo group. Here's all of the searches we're running, but you know, here's a sample because you're not the Duo team, you're not compliance. If you do want to see everything, Carnegie Mellon's hiring. So, so like here's the searches we're running for monitoring Duo. Here's the PCI controls. The name kind of gives an explanation, but we're also there to explain everything. Do you see anything we're missing? There'll be different reports of the kind of logs we're seeing. Also get these groups integrated into using Splunk. So, you know, here's a sample dashboard of some administrative activity. So if we were talking, we may say, hey, I see there was a 2FA error message over the weekend. Do you know what that was about? Or they may say, hey, I see there's this error. You folks in the SOC didn't contact us. Why didn't you contact us? And we could say, oh, well, you know, we did investigate, but we had the necessary logs, or, oh, we just totally missed it. We didn't even know a 2FA error was something we should focus on. And then also, you know, sample notable events, which is a Splunk term for incidents. So here's, you know, a sample of the alerts we've seen. Are these things we should be looking for? So looking at like this, maybe that top alert where the source was in the 199A range. Hey, don't bother with 199, that's test. That's always gonna have crazy stuff going on. Or why was there an alert from the 100 source? We could also talk about like, you know, this reviewer, man, they really know Duo. Maybe we should talk to them and see, can they help us? Maybe they have an interest in being a Duo admin in the future, back to that collaboration or career path thing. Or, you know, explain terms, like for the middle one, what's a non-anomalous login? If, you know, the IT person had a question, or why did you give that such a short response? Well, you know, in that case, we really need to talk to that SOC analyst. Why did they put 3 words that don't really tell me anything about what they did? You know, but we show this is what we've been doing, monitoring your system. This is the value we're trying to provide to the organization. This is how this maps to compliance controls. We know you're getting audited, we're getting audited. You know, we're all part of this one big organization. Let's improve this together. This is what we do in the SOC all day. We're not just sending you weird emails or giving you calls or booting you off the network continually. Like, we're doing things because we have compliance, because we want to make the place a better organization. Can you help us? So I've been in this setup for going on 2 years between the previous 2 employers. I've had pretty good outcomes. So like the first year of building a SOC, didn't even detect the penetration test. It wasn't until they were enterprise admin and they got loud on purpose just to see if we would detect anything. Did I finally see an alert? I mean, that's bad. That's terrible. The second year, we didn't block the pen test, but we detected them. We detected them within hours. An alert within days or hours is better than an alert within months, or finding out on the news you were breached a year later, right? This is all continuous improvement. SOC morale improved. We went from, hey, you know, we've got this glut of alerts. We open alert, close alert. Our SLAs are amazing, but, you know, nobody was happy to the SOC's improving. People were seeing interesting alerts. People want to make the SOC better. The whole team felt like they were contributing. It was no longer, well, I'm just the junior SOC admin. I get alerts in the morning, I close them, I go home, and then I repeat the next day. It was, oh, well, you know, this portion of the SOC I helped build, I helped improve. We went from not monitoring the mainframe at all to monitoring the mainframe. And it was myself and one of the junior analysts. And he was just like, you know, I didn't know anything about a mainframe. Now we're monitoring mainframes. No, and then nobody does that. I mean, it was amazing. We built mainframe monitoring. The SOC visibility improved. People knew what we were working on. They knew why we were working on things. You know, we had the phishing intake. Hey, I got this phishing message. But people were also notifying us, hey, I did the system upgrade, or hey, this system had behaved strangely. Did you folks see anything? People knew about the SOC. They were trying to help us. We weren't just the random people in that room with a locked door that you just kind of walk by or you avoid, because they're just like the auditors and they make my life miserable, you know? But yeah, so that's where I started. We're in the process of building a student security operations center. We need students, so come on and enroll at Carnegie Mellon University. Questions?
So from like ground zero,
Oh, we got to get you a mic. Yeah.
So from ground zero, when you're first, like the SOC was even just an idea at that point. Like, where did you begin? Like, how do you start?
So, admittedly, the first time around, you know, I had Splunk for enterprise security with all the generic searches. Finally, after like a few months of just spinning our wheels, we turned everything off. And it was, okay, let's go from system to system and figure out what makes sense to monitor. For some systems, like, okay, if you've got a Windows domain controller, there's a wealth of resources online for building decent alerts. For other systems, we sat down with those groups and we just said, hey, we're wasting our time here. Can you help us figure out what we should be monitoring? Sometimes you gotta, you know, grease the wheels with a box of donuts or a cake. But you know, you do what you have to do, and every group has the person who wants to talk to you and help. Like, yeah, you also have to search out that person.
Can you tell us more about how you set up that mainframe monitoring?
Yeah, so initially it was flow control, just looking at, like, could we get flow data at the edge of the mainframe? We did a little bit with intrusion detection, like looking just for like the error message. And then the mainframe team already had reports that were being exported. So it was logs that were 24 hours old. And then finally we bought a product sync sort that converted mainframe messages to syslog, but still that was, you know, no offense to them, that was converting messages to syslog, and then it was back to reading mainframe documentation, talking to people like Phil Young, mainframe 767, what should I be looking at? And then we got the terminology down, so we knew, like, you know, behavior profiling, the things that were valuable and not just failed logins. So like, these users should only run these jobs, which are equivalent to programs. Or
what was that username, Phil?
Phil Young, he's mainframe 767. I think he's running evil mainframe hacking tomorrow afternoon here. But yeah, he's the guy to talk to for all things mainframe. Yeah.
Follow-on question about replacing Splunk Enterprise Security with relationship building. I'm doing something kind of similar to that, but I'm a little terrified about how long it's going to take. Like, I'm fine with baby steps forever toward the horizon, always getting better, but at some point I want to be able to point at it and say, hey, look what we did, and I'm a little terrified about how long that's going to take. So can you talk about that process a little bit, please?
Yeah, the first time, it took about a year till we were doing well, so there was a lot of panic as, you know, the audits were coming back. Yeah, the metrics were shot, exactly. But yeah, we started turning things off, turning new things on as we would write them, and because you were working fast anyway, now you had a whole mess of new alerts that weren't very good, but the junior team understood, like, hey, these are only going to show up for a little bit. So our metrics were wild for a good 6 months of like, each analyst has 100 events, each analyst has 5 to 100, which, you know, you average that out over a month. It didn't look too bad. Fudge the numbers a little bit.
But it even out because everybody was participating.
Yeah.
It was hard, but people wanted to do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then, you know, we tracked, hey, these were new searches or correlation search in Splunk that we had implemented, and luckily, purposely, we had everything mapped to compliance so we could explain why we were doing it. We weren't just throwing, you know, roles or searches out. Like, we did this mapping to this compliance role or requirement.
So I'm very interested in seeing what it's going to be like in another semester or another year, because I think you're going to have some really interesting metrics on how you're driving the arms race, because your mainframe student and SOC students are going to get much better, and your red team students are going to get better, and each one is going to have some sort of influence on it. It's going to be interesting to watch the results.
I'm very excited for the red team students, which Carnegie Mellon has way too many of. Uh-oh. Way too many in a good statement, just as a blue teamer, you know.
How do you find that analysts run into, like, I don't know, I don't have a name for it, SOC burnout, or alert burnout?
Oh, yeah.
Where they're how do you deal with that? Do you rotate on what they're looking for? Do you test them, you know?
So I tried to figure out, you know, what are people's interests? So, you know, are you a network person? Why don't you start meeting with the network team with me, or meet with them even more, like for the improvement side of what we should be monitoring? Why don't you try writing some searches and see what happens? I'm here, other Splunk professionals are in the organization that could give you guide points, because you're still contributing to the SOC and you're still making us better, but you know, how do you take a break but you're still helping us? Yeah. And then for reference, the SOC size is around 12 people. So I don't know how this would scale for like the 200-person mega SOCs that some of these banks have.
So being a university, are you actually using students as your junior analysts, like part-time students, or is that what you're building?
So we started over the summer with a small test group. This coming fall will be go live. The spring and summer have been, let's build this out, get this as professional as we can once the students show up, as well as I'd reference Follow the Sun, the students at Carnegie Mellon Cutter, when they start showing up, how do we perform that transition? Like junior professional analysts have done transitions where I've been elsewhere, but students will be an interesting change for that specifically.
I've seen 2 more hands here. We'll do these last 2 questions and then we'll call it.
So addressing SOC burnout and low morale, what are the top 2, 3 ways that you've increased or been able to increase morale within your SOC?
1, get rid of terrible alerts, like the failed login. I hate it. Every analyst I've ever worked with has hated them. If there's an alert you keep seeing that you don't like, flag it. Like, let's stop looking at bad alerts. There aren't too many people who don't want to see an alert because they just don't like it. It's usually, well, this just doesn't provide any value. And then trying to get everybody to feel like they're contributing. Break down, like, you're a senior, you're a junior, like, we're all part of the SOC. I don't know everything. You're new, you should be bringing new insights. Like, I'm getting trained in my way. Like, I'm getting old. Tell me what I'm doing wrong, break these habits. I used to have the manager that got hit with the worms, and that's all that person had ever thought about. I've been in a lot of phishing and now ransomware in the news. Like, am I going to be that guy that's entirely focused on ransomware because I saw WannaCry once? Like, these new people should be telling me, like, hey, no, you're stuck in your way, right? Hopefully. Or we're going to keep getting phished forever. But
so, may I have a last question? If you are in a situation of building a SOC in a company from scratch, like there is no SOC whatsoever, and you have a couple of people only as the resources, would you be able to define, please, the main focuses? What should these few people focus on, concentrate?
So if you were building a SOC and you had limited resources, which I feel like is every SOC I've ever been in, I've always gone to mail filtering and specifically egress, because usually you have your ingress relatively secured, but the phishing's always going to be an attack. I mean, we see that in all the other talks. Everybody basically seems to come in understanding email too, so you don't have that giant training barrier. Web applications, that's tough. I have trouble with web application attacks, so maybe I keep it on the back burner because I have trouble. But people seem to understand web browsing because they could browse the internet and build the same traffic. People seem to understand email because they're sending and receiving. And those have always been my two focuses. The failed login thing, it's such a mess from scripting and such.
All right, big round of applause for Andy. Thank you all.